Still buzzing slash annoyed about that FA Cup performance. Yeah, me too. No, I hear you. We'll take the win though, and we'll keep on rolling, right? This is United versus everybody. I am your host, Sean. We are back today for another fun video. Big up the women's team, by the way, for a big 6-0 win yesterday over Wolves in the women's FA Cup. Both teams are actually, now that I think about it, both teams are mounting an FA Cup title defense because they won it last year as well. So big up the women's team. At least somebody's rocking and rolling. We don't have another match for like a week, though. So what are we going to talk about until then, right? We'll likely have a few news roundups during the week as, silly season really gets going between now. We've already seen some crazy rumors about some Midtjylland players, some Barcelona players and whatnot. But you guys know that I also like to take these long intervals between matches to get your thoughts on just random shit that I think about and talk about when it comes to United. You see where I'm going with this. Today, I do want to share a few things that I think that Ruben Amorim can do to salvage something respectable from this season, or at least start to get a few more results going our way, because it's been very, very up and down. To be fair, we have won 6 out of our last 8, but not convincingly. And sure, we went undefeated in the league phase of the Europa League, and we are still in the FA Cup, like I said, barely. But our league form has been so bad. 13th in the table, 29 points, -6 GD, 6 points off the top half of the table, way out of sight of top 4. It's not been going well in the league. It sounds almost insurmountable when you lay it out there, right, bare for everyone to see. But I do think that there are a few little things that Amorim could do that he could do to maybe change things around, shore things up, that also wouldn't compromise his tactical principles, his system, all that stuff, because we know that the media is just waiting to pounce on him doing that. Plus, a few of the things that I have in mind could go a long way towards getting a few naysayers among the fan base back on side without necessarily coming across as simply pandering, if that also makes sense. So I'm going to go through my list. I'm going to leave it open to your suggestions as well. Like the video, please subscribe to the channel if you're new, you want to get involved. Check the membership perks to learn how your ideas and your topics and your suggestions for like live streams and panel shows and whatnot could kind of be used for future content. Your ideas could feature with shout outs, whether that's scouting reports, whether that's topics of discussion. Check the membership perks to learn how that is. Let me get and see what is. Wow, we got all sorts of stuff going on. I'm gonna get involved in this first. We got a good little conversation, it looks like, going on. Welcome, Ruthless. Welcome to the channel. I'm gonna let you guys have your conversation because I don't want to derail too much. But welcome to the channel, Ruthless. Welcome, Jay. It looks like you guys are having a fun little back and forth. Big up that. I'm all for the conversations. Dark Crow, big up as always. I like to see you back here. He says Ruben Amorim is showing a bit of favoritism. We had a little discussion about that yesterday, I think. Do you guys think Ruben Amorim is showing favoritism? Let me know what you think in the chat here. Why don't I go ahead and start things off with a fun little question. Do you think Amorim is showing favoritism? I'll let you guys let me know what you think. Darko says he's got to talk less too. Yikes. Big up, everyone. Big up, Usman. How are you doing? You guys know I like to start things off by just welcoming everybody to the stream. But big up, Usman. Been a minute. Hope you and the family are doing well, but I know you guys had a little bit of a rough go of it a little while ago, but I hope you guys are doing well. Hope everybody's pulling together. We are here for you, my guy. Good to see you again. Stop being stubborn. Darko's just already going in. Big up, Danny B in the house. My Irish brother from another mother getting involved. Lionheart says, good to see you, Lionhearts. Nice classic shirt. Love it. Definitely my favorite. Yeah, you guys do know I have an embarrassingly large shirt collection. None of it was purchased from the club, but it's a really sad indictment of how I choose to spend my money. Unfortunately, that's how we roll in America. I think that in the UK you don't see it as much in terms of people rocking the shirts to the matches and whatnot. But here in America, we love it. Big up Perlu. Big up everyone from Singapore, says Pearl. Good to see you again, Pearl. Big up to just the people from Singapore. Danny, yes and no, we can't really say because he has very little to work with. Yeah, you guys are kind of talking about favoritism. Yeah, we talked a little bit about that yesterday. I think the implication was, I think somebody used the word nepotism in terms of Portuguese players with Bruno and Dallo. We know that Dallo struggles. I think that Bruno, I think Bruno is very mercurial. He's very divisive with the fan base. But again, these are two players that have been playing on a regular basis for multiple managers. So it's hard to say that there's favoritism there, but I can understand the frustration. So we're going to get stuck in. We're not going to waste too much time. I'm going to go through my options. Feel free to throw out some of your options as well, you guys. Danny's not having it with Dallo, you guys know. And I've been very critical with Dallo. I think that there are a lot of aspects of Dallo's games, kind of like Marcus Rashford, that he's yet to develop since he's been at United. Dallo's been here since, 2017, 2018 season. So final ball, awful. 1v1's awful. Passing sometimes very, very sketch. He hasn't really developed his left, even though he has a left. He hasn't really worked on it. Danny says if Dallo's not dropped over the next few games, I think there might be a little favoritism if there is other options. Yeah, we're going to see. I think that with Dorgu, we might see something different. But let's get stuck in here, you guys. Not gonna dally too long because I know we are probably watching some of these FA Cup matches. Anybody watch that Wolves match earlier against Blackburn? The Wolves got a couple of goals real quick. But number one on my list, Amorim has got to stop chopping and changing. If you remember from we did that New Year's resolutions video, that stream that I had with Dylan. Remember we were chilling with Dylan. One of my demands for Ruben Amorim heading into the new year was to figure out his best 11, figure out a core 15, 16, and stick with it in the run of games. Not only that, but put them in their best positions. And for a second there, it kind of looked like he had done that, right? We started to see a little bit of consistency over a run of games, started to see how people could fit. It did just take a couple weeks, though, for him to start tinkering with the team a little bit again. And some of his team selections, for me anyway, in recent weeks have been kind of frustrating, eyebrow raising to say the least. Again, I've talked about, I think the decision to start Manu up top and bench both strikers against FCSB, that kind of really got me frustrated. Dropping Bruno to the pivot is another one that may seem like a smart move on paper, right? We're like, oh, Bruno, he's got a passing range. He can read the game. He can drop deep. He can dictate play. Yeah, it sounds good on paper when you look at it from a sheer player trait standpoint, but we've seen that he's also not press resistant. He's not physical. He doesn't quite have the legs. And yeah, he's got a passing range, but it's very, very hit or miss. So in theory, it might seem that, but clearly he's not as effective there as I think he is in a number 10, even if he does put a defensive shift there like he did against Leicester. Because again, I put out those numbers against Leicester. Defensively, he was fine, but his attacking output suffers when you have to drop him deep. I think we want him deep. I love Kobbie Mainoo. And while I don't think he's a 6, and I definitely don't know if he's the type of midfielder that works in this pivot necessarily, I don't think he's better in the 10 than Bruno. I don't think he's going to be better than 9 than an actual striker. Shifting focus to the wide position, play Dorgu on the left. Obviously, he's only been here one match. He's only played 45 minutes, but he started him on the right. I don't care who's on the right. Just play Dorgu on the left. I don't necessarily want Dallo on the right. That's probably going to be his best position in this system, but I'd rather play Ahmad there. You guys know that. There's no reason for me to chase a left wing back this long, spend big money to bring him in January, well, really February, if you think about it, only to play him on the right. We know his qualities. And I get he's played on the right at Lecce a few times this season, and we know that Amorim likes his wingbacks to maybe invert. At least one of them he likes to invert. And maybe you can make an argument that without a lot of training so far, maybe playing him in a position to start at United that he's played a little bit more at Lecce could be a smooth transition. I get all that. But I still don't like it. You guys know I don't like the awkward foot on one side. Like I want right footers on the right side because I don't like that it slows the game down to stop, to cut in, and Dallo does this all the time. Part of me worries based on some of Amorim's comments that we signed Dorgu to play a little bit on the right side. Time will tell if this was part of the plan because he is versatile. But you guys, I want us to play the best players in the best positions and go from there. Lionart says Dallas should have been taken off on Friday. I was surprised that it was Dorgu. Yeah, I think that this is a part of management sometimes that does frustrate me a little bit. is the hesitancy to do this. I think that players are ready. Just play them. We saw Ten Hag take a year and 1,000 minutes to start integrating guys like Ugarte in. Just play them. They're ready. I just don't frustrate. Danny's watching the rugby. Interesting. Danny says, is there any time to experiment? It's now, so I don't really blame him. He's exposing the poo in a way. I mean, the poo expose themselves, right? The shit floats. So we're going to see it. It's going to be noticeable. You can't hide shit. It's going to float to the top. Jay says, Amorim is just assessing what he's got. I don't see anything wrong with what he's doing. I think that by now, my issue is by now he should already know what the best 11 are. Like, you shouldn't have to, at this point, throw Kabi in a 9 and drop both strikers. Like, to me, that doesn't make sense. Again, these are my opinions. This is what I would like to see. Stop chopping and changing so much. Stop experimenting. Stop reacting to certain things. Play the best players in their best positions. Focus on the system, the tactical stuff, and quit moving things around too much. It's really starting to frustrate me. Danny says, Mainu is the only midfielder we have that press resistant and can play through the first phase comfortably. He is. I don't know if Mainu, and Amorim kind of said this, maybe there's, and I've said this before about Mainu, is that I feel playing him too deep, i.e. in the double pivot in the deep, you lose a little of the attacking, but at the same time, I don't like him so far up front to where he's like a false 9 or a 9 or even necessarily a 10 necessarily. It just depends. Because Mainu's interception numbers were actually pretty good at the beginning of the season, but I don't like, it's the same with Bruno. Like, he can do it on a given day, especially, but I think you miss more of what he offers when you're playing him in certain positions versus the other ones. Jay says, Kavi is a 6, 8, and 10. Let's not forget he's a developing player. Yeah, no, exactly. He is a developing player for sure. And I've said this many times. You guys know if you've been following the channel. I've said it many times, whether it's with Højlund, Kavi, Garnacho, Collier, Yoro. The one consistent thing you're going to get from these youngsters is inconsistency, and that's it. Kavi not only is he's developing as a player, he's literally been playing first-team football for just over a year. He's developing physically. He's not quite fully grown yet. You guys can see that. It's kind of like Harry Amos. Harry Amos is going to have to get a growth spurt or hit the gym or something. I think we're yet to see what Kavi can fully do because I think that Kavi is just not quite fully physically developed yet. And once he does that and gets used to that, then we'll start to see a little bit more. Jay says that the strikers are not scoring and we're not creating enough for them to score these goals. I mean, yeah. Well, that's two separate arguments, right? If they're not scoring, it's one thing, but if they're not creating, that's another. I think oftentimes, and I'm not saying you're doing this, but I think oftentimes people look at score lines without necessarily watching the match, and they'll say, well, we're not scoring goals, so it must be on the striker. Well, it's not necessarily the case. We're not creating a lot. You guys remember that pass map I brought up? I can't remember if it was Wolves or Newcastle. Like, Højlund played 9 and literally got no passes that game. Like, we're not finding him. Against Leicester, I rattled out the stats yesterday after the Leicester match. 1 cross completed the entire time out of like well over a dozen. Like, how is a striker supposed to score without any sort of accurate service, without anybody finding him, without anybody seeing those runs? We saw a little bit more of what our strikers can do when they have a little bit room to run and we're not just playing hold up. But the strikers also have to learn how to do better. So I've said it both sides. I see both sides. Leinart says, Pogba coming back an actual possibility. I mean, never say never, but I would probably say I would not like that deal. But as far as this goes, ultimately, I want us to play our best players in their best positions. We can experiment in some cases, in some matches. I would have liked to experiment more had we had like a dead rubber in the Europa League. Like if we had turned a couple of those draws into wins, I would have liked to maybe take a match and experiment. We can experiment in the league or whatever. If we're up by a couple goals and there's like 5-10 minutes left, cool, do whatever you want. We can't keep dropping points in the league. If we can get to safety, I can maybe even understand experimenting a little bit, but right now we just can't. We lose another match. We lose against Spurs. Other results don't go our way. We're down to 16th, and it's just getting harder and harder to even finish in the top half of the table. But you guys know, again, my opinion, but I'm just like, I hate seeing Amorim experiment a little too much and tinker with things. I don't think at this point he should have to do that. So that's what the training pitch is for. That's what dead rubbers and things are for. So Slash jumping in. How are you doing? Good to see you again. Teresa, welcome back. Hi all. Amorim was very confident that he'd win. He was certainly livid with the performances they produced, so how can that be his fault? Took Dorgu off so he wouldn't get contaminated with crap. Well, unfortunately, it seems like no matter who you are, the moment you arrive at United, you get contaminated by it. It's just hard to wash that out, right? But welcome back, Teresa. Good to see you. Danny says, even under Eric Ten Hag, we never created for the striker. Veghorst even said it in an interview last year. Yeah, the problem too, especially under Ten Hag, this was very, very apparent, is that we don't have wingers. We don't have wingers who create. We had inverted wingers. We didn't have wingers who put balls into the box. We're now starting to see Garnacho do that. Obviously, Ahmad's doing that a little bit more as well. I'd like to see Ahmad make a decision a little quicker. You guys know that I feel that way. But the problem is we started doing that in that first half against FCSB, and we had no strikers on the pitch to get into those positions. Garnacho alone just flashed about 2 or 3 balls across the face of goal. Nobody was there because Kabi, while he may be good in linking up play and good with his feet and press resistant, he's not a natural 9. So positioning wise, it's not in him to be there. But I hear you. You guys know my thoughts on that are well documented. So moving on, number 2. Let's try 2 up front. Now, this may seem hypocritical because I just said to stop chopping and changing, but this one has merit simply because Amorim has used a 3-5-2, a 2-striker system in his past clubs on a few occasions. So it's not outside of the realm of possibility. If you watch us play, whoever is leading the line is isolated, like beyond isolated. I don't just mean space between the striker and his teammates, but isolated because he's surrounded by opposition players. I think that our opponents can very easily mark Højlund or Xerxes out of the game completely because they don't have anyone else to worry about. There's not enough bodies in and around the area because we're dropping too deep. Our wingbacks are sitting deep to make a 5 instead of being attack-minded and progressive. Our 10s are having to drop deep to collect the ball. They're facing their own goal, sometimes in their own half. What are they supposed to do when they get it? They're getting pressed off of it in their own half. We're losing possession in very, very dangerous areas because of it. Playing Garnacho alongside our striker, whoever's playing, or even just a little off the striker, almost like a second striker, could stretch defenses a little bit, pull them this way and that way, offer a little movement, a little bit of a distraction, and it also give our strikers someone to link up with in the final phase, someone to grab a second ball when we do hoof a long ball and someone gets ahead to it. There's not enough teammates around our number 9s. Again, it would provide that outlet for a second ball. I'm not trying to make Garnacho a striker. I'm not trying to force him into that role. I'm not saying let's turn him into a striker. He's young. It's about getting another body in advanced positions to engage defenders and give our strikers a little bit of breathing room. Right now, it's just too easy to mark them out of the game. Amorim wouldn't have to change a whole lot. So Robbie Savage can't come in and say he's abandoned his principles. It's just a matter of just tweaking a little bit of positional awareness on the pitch. Here's a couple ways that I think that Amorim could do this that, again, as you see, wouldn't require a whole lot. So let me put the first one on there right now. And I've talked about this a couple times. You can call this a 3-1-4-2. You can call it a 3-5-2. The 3-5-2 is typically how it's referred to. But basically, it's just letting Ugarte sit a little deeper because he's not a Kevin De Bruyne. He's not a Frankie de Jong. He's not a Vitinha. He's not someone who's going to win the ball, start the attack, and then play these incisive passes. Yeah, he can play a ball into the final third, but it's not what he's here for. He's here to win the ball, find a teammate. Amorim has used this formation in the past. Using Ugarte as a patrolling defensive midfielder offers protection in front of the back 3. I think he does have the legs. I think he does have the physicality, and I think that is a little bit of breathing room. But what this allows us to do is kind of keep our wingbacks in a more of advanced starting position. There's still a pivot, but it's not a deep pivot like it normally is. It allows Bruno and Menu to operate really as 8s rather than a 6 or a 10 kind of thing. And I think that 8s are where both of them are probably going to shine most of all. We just don't play with 8s. We haven't played with 8s in years. I think with Ugarte sitting deeper, again, where he's played many, many times for PSG, he has played as that lone defensive midfielder in the past. The 2-8s don't have to track back as much, something that Amorim also referred to when talking about Kobbie Mainoo. He said he's a little distracted having to track back. I think this would allow him to not have to worry too much. It doesn't excuse him from defensive duties, but it does get the best of both worlds, in my opinion. Danny says, Rudin knew these players could only play one style of football. IQ is very low. All these players can play 4-4-2 transition. Yeah. I've said this for years, Danny. You guys know that there are so many players, and we're starting to see a couple of them get moved on. The football IQ in this squad is on the floor, and because a lot of them can only play counterattack. This is why Ollie and Jose, like, we looked very, very good. But then when you get tactical managers like Ten Hag, like Amorim, and the players can't just run and can't just hoof shit like Bruno and Rashford and stuff, the things break down. When the players have to stop and then think about things a little bit and try to get tactics, it doesn't work. And not only that, but you add to the fact that Amorim, one of his main goals was to start getting these players to think about football differently, to read the game in different ways. It adds a whole nother layer. Lionheart cannot see Garnacho as a striker. I would try Højlund playing off Xerxes. Yeah, you can do it either way. I mean, this is just an example. The reason I didn't put Xerxes and Højlund up there is because part of me doesn't like having our only two strikers on the pitch at the same time. It's not necessarily forcing Garnacho to play as a striker. It's just starting him in a little bit more advanced role, kind of giving him he's still kind of in that winger role, but he's just a little more advanced and not having to play a little deeper. It's movement. We need movement. I think Garnacho could play in that Cunha, in that Delap kind of role, but I want him to play a little higher. Teresa says I can play better soccer than. That's a 4-letter word, right? So there's that option, and I've spoken about this a couple times. And then there's another option that I have spoken about, and that is a 3-4-1-2 kind of a deal. So this puts Bruno back to that familiar kind of 10 role, acting as kind of a link-up facilitator from midfield to the attacking duo. And again, it could be whoever you attack. Try not to get focused on personnel. I just put him on here because that's what I had on here. It's just look at the position more than the player headshot here. But I think that he can act as like this link up between the front three. Basically, you're just taking you can almost call Bruno a false 9 a little bit and call the two attacking players like just attackers. Really, it's all semantics at that point. But I think against certain opposition, I think, again, when we're getting pressed and we're trying to beat the press, we need more bodies higher up the pitch because we're way too isolated. There's way too much space. There's not enough movement, not enough options, not enough outlets for passing, for link-up play, for winning second balls. We hardly ever win a second ball. I think now and then, just looking at the opposition, looking fitness-wise, whatever, adding another body, or even telling Garnacho, play a little deep, play a little more advanced, sit up a little more advanced, kind of run off. Like, it doesn't take much. Again, little tweaks, I think, could do it. So, Danny says, put Bruno where Garnacho was and play Collier in the pivot. Yeah, you could put wherever you want. Again, these are just examples. This is some of the players who I kind of already had on the team sheet that I just moved around a little bit. So again, try not to look at the actual person as much. Danny says, I think that's better, packs the midfield more. Yeah, and you guys know that the midfield tends to be a little open. It's a little too easy to get through us. And I think that the pivot in Amorim's system requires a very specific high energy, high physicality, high stamina, on and off the ball mentality midfielder. And we don't have too many of those right now. And I think that, again, I've said many times, because we're so vulnerable, I think we need to pack that midfield a little bit more, especially when you watch teams like Liverpool, teams like Newcastle, Brighton, the way that they pack that midfield, the way they are aggressive in midfield. We have to at least match that because we don't have the players who can just dribble or pass around it. We don't have that quality in the squad right now. So I think adding some numbers gives you some time to breathe, give you some space to breathe on the pitch. We'll see how it goes. But that's just two options. Slashes Collier has definitely played his way into the conversation. Yeah, I have a Collier image. These are just who I threw up there. So Lionheart says, this makes sense. I was expecting a similar formation when Amorim's side. Yeah, and again, it's not that I think this is right or wrong. This is just every now and then, just get an extra body, pack the midfield a little bit. It doesn't take a lot because right now, the lack of personnel that suit the system is really forcing us to kind of play a little deeper. We're not progressing the ball very well. And so you guys let me know what you think about that one. I'm going to go on to my next item here, and that is we got to work with the strikers a little bit. I feel for Amorim a bit when it comes to Højlund and Xerxes. They were signed for Ten Hag, And that doesn't mean that they're as bad, I think, as a lot of United fans are making them out to be. They're not there yet. And quite frankly, I've not seen enough to convince me 100% that either of them are going to be the guy. But they're both new. They're both not signed for this system. Hoyland's younger. It doesn't excuse his touch and everything. And you guys see, we're not creating enough. There's a lot going on. It's not just down to one person necessarily, is basically what I'm saying. I feel for Amorim a little bit too, because he hasn't had a lot of time to train. Obviously, he came in, had some training, and then we had so many fixtures that there just wasn't no time. He's getting a little more time now. He said Dorgu's had like 3 training sessions, so we're getting more time. They'll have more time this week. But he's not going to be able to use that excuse for a whole lot longer. So whether it's finishing, movement, hold-up play, link-up play, whatever it is, whatever you have to work on, both Xerxes and Højlund need some intense, focused training. I don't care if it's with the coaching staff. I don't care if you bring in outside, if you want to get like RH coaching who's been working with Obi Martin or something. I don't care what it is. Something's got to get focused on the strikers. Consult with whoever this is. Tell them how you want to play. Tell them what you want to see, and get them focused, because it's hard to bring in a new coach, new system, new everything, and try to tackle everything with limited training. This is going to address both their role in the system, but also just their development and even the basics as young strikers. We need to do more to find them, like Amorim has said, but he's also said they need to not be so frustrated when they're not getting the ball. They need to be ready mentally and physically and positionally for the next opportunity and the next opportunity after that. You have to keep working. We'll see what happens with the remainder of the season, but the links to a new striker are not going away. So one of, or even both of, Højlund and Xerxes could be out the door if they don't improve, or if we get a decent offer for them and Amorim just says, I don't think these guys are for me. Lionheart says, I really wanted to see Rashford and Højlund strike duo, but alas. Yeah, that's a mentality thing with Rashford. We've done several streams on that. Danny says, when Ruud left, Højlund's game declined, in my opinion. Yeah, and I think that it's a different system. And this is why I do think that I've said it many times. And again, this isn't about, it's not Højlund's fault, or it is. It's just, I don't like the way we're playing when Højlund's on the pitch. I get he's a bigger guy, but his hold-up play is not his game. It's not ever going to be his game. He's not that kind of striker. He's not an Olivier Giroud. Just because he's bigger, he wants to run into space. We saw glimpses of this, like Danny's saying, like what we saw under Ruud. We saw glimpses of this against Leicester and against against Leicester a little bit when we were getting into some spaces, and he can turn a little bit. But we got to stop playing that way, because it's not working, because it's not his game. It just is what it is. It's like me asking Bruno to play defensive role in midfield. It's not his game. And it wouldn't be fair to Bruno to ask that of him. Teresa says, doesn't make any sense. If they only know one style, why are they performing in training? Bad attitude on the pitch. They're only selfish, arrogant, and pathetic. Sorry, I'm mad. No, it's okay. You could be mad. I think that there's an age-old adage, right, about selfish strikers. You want a little bit of that selfishness. I think you're going to see this a lot from Højlund. There was an instance against Leicester when Højlund had an opportunity to play Garnacho in a little earlier. And if you notice, so instead of, like, the pass was on from here, but Højlund waited a little bit until Garnacho got a little further, because he wanted it to go here so Højlund can continue his run and get a ball instead of having to run onto it and then turn. Because Højlund wanted that ball turn him so he can finish it first time. That's why he played that ball a little later, and it didn't end up going anywhere because they weren't quite on the same page. He put a little too much on it. But instances like that, this guy, I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore. Where's that from? I know that's from something. I just can't remember what it is. Let me know. So, yeah, working with the strikers, whether that's making some focus time in training, getting them one-on-one time with whoever our striking coach is, or bringing in some consultancy. We've been bringing in a lot of coaching consultants. We've got Sam Arith here on an interim basis. We brought in that mentality coach recently who's worked with decathletes and Olympians. I forget his name now, Mata or something. Bring in some outside help for working with the strikers. I think that Ruud leaving, like Danny says, really we saw a decline, but I think that we've seen a little bit of a shift in a lot of players with this new system. I'm not blaming Amorim. I'm just saying it's a lot to take on at once. So, but you guys let me know how you guys feeling so far. This isn't about right and wrong. This is just my opinions, things that I'd like to see. They're not major. They're little tweaks here and there, just little things that I think could have good impacts and at least get us back to limping for the remainder of the season. But moving on, number 4, up the tempo. One major criticism that I've had with Amorim's system and style of play is just how slow we are. And we saw a little bit under Ten Hag too. But whether it's building from the back, moving the ball, progressing the ball, wide players sitting too deep, or everyone taking 100 touches to do anything in the final phase of attack, we're just too slow. And not only does this allow bodies from the opposition to get back into shape, get back in defensive shape, but it ruins any momentum we have whenever we do get an attack. The speed at which we move the ball and make decisions really has got to up. I get, again, with the system, with Amorim's system, when we saw this Sporting, it does favor a disciplined, patient build-up. That's the name of the game in this system, but I do think we can speed things up just a little bit. Now, some of this also has to do with personnel. Like I've said, having Dalot on the left, he's not a natural left footer. Just the extra touch he takes to get back on his right, or just the lack of familiarity and comfort he has while even just receiving the ball on that side, those kill precious little microseconds and little precious time. And it just kills any momentum we have. And all that takes is that little bit of time. May not seem like a lot, but it just allows the opposition to get back a little deeper and just get numbers back. And it just kills anything. I said it before. Premier League sides, especially in the last couple of years, and we're seeing a lot more now, they're too physical. They press too well. There's too much energy for us to simply just pass the ball in a horseshoe pattern around our defense. You know, you can do that when you're up by a couple goals and there's 5 minutes left. You guys know that my catchphrase in those moments is make it boring. You can do that then, not in the first half when you're trying to chase a goal here. I think, again, it would help if we had players who could play a little bit more incisive passes along the ground, not just hoof it, not have to cut in onto their stronger foot all the time. The closest we had was Licha in that regard, personally. We just don't have enough players who do it as much. Hayden Hackney, just saying, go check out Hayden Hackney. But this also touches a little bit on the chopping and changing one, because I do think natural left and natural right footers playing on their preferred side, like I said, would make that attack a little bit quicker, because it just takes precious seconds out of the equation. It's less hesitation, less adjustment when they receive the ball, quicker movements, and they don't have to take a couple touches. So I'm looking at you, Diogo, because we know that you're guilty of this. But I do think the big part of why we're so slow is the player themselves, also the mentality. They're hesitant. They're taking too much time, too many touches. They get the ball in these 1v1s, like Dalot does this all the time, and he shits himself. He doesn't know what to do. He's not comfortable, and he just passes it. He just hoofs it. Like against Leicester, he was just hoofing it, and it was just not working out. I get that games sometimes just to draw in the press and then find a wide player with a switch of play, but it's just not working. Just move the ball quicker. It's not, again, it's just a little bit of a tweak. I think could have a huge difference. Lionheart's from Network. Okay, I've never seen it. I know the line. I've never seen it though. Teresa says I could fix this team. I'd send them all back to soccer school. Danny says the only coach we need is one to pull up outside of Carrington to haul away the deadwood to the airport and get him the fuck out of our club. This guy. Teresa says, Sean, the tempo isn't Amorim's at all. He just wants intensity back to the academy. No, I think that it's not on Amorim, because it's not that Amorim is forcing players who like Dalot to take extra touches. It's just that, again, like Leicester, why bring in a natural left footer and play him on the right kind of thing? I think there are little things that he could do. Again, it's not about blaming and right or wrong or your fault, his fault, good or bad. It's just about this is what's not going well. This is what we need to make changes on, and these are the changes I think could get us there. Little things. Danny says, if Maguire is the cog in the first phase, it kills everything. Amorim is wasting his time. Maguire sets the tempo. Yeah, and I think that, like you're saying, that is a good point, is that when you're building out from the back, this system relies very heavily on defenders who are good on the ball, press resistant, who can create space for themselves. And Licha was probably the best defender we had for this system. Maguire, in a counterattacking system, when he's got time and space, can pick a pass. To be fair to him, he can pick a pass, and he's actually decent on the ball, kind of like McTominay when he gets into a run, like we saw against Leicester as well. But not every team is going to be Leicester, and we barely scrape by against Leicester. We need better defenders. Now, I put it's in the I think the link is in the description still. I haven't yet removed it. I did do a video on Lissandro Martinez replacements for left-sided center backs who are good on the ball and who have leadership and mentality. If you guys want to learn a little bit more, or if you want to see who I would maybe target in the summer, go ahead and check that out. There's a couple of free options in there that I think when we're in a PSR situation could do the job. But again, we need to move the ball just a little quicker. Some of that is position, like team selection. Some of that is player mentality. Some of that is just player quality. Again, it's not an easy fix, but it's something that I do think can be at least addressed right now. Danny says, what did Amorim do with Coates? Oh, yeah, I remember Coates, yeah. Sees Maguire as a Coates, yeah. So the central defender is kind of, they're going to, in an ideal situation, an ideal Amorim system, the keeper also needs to be good on the ball. And the keeper is going to push up. The central defender is going to move up a little bit. And then the two wide defenders are going to move a little wider. Ideally, the problem is we're not doing that because, again, we don't necessarily have the personnel to do it. Maguire gets caught on the ball too much because he's a little slow. It's not his fault he's slow. You can't change stuff like that. But it's just the fact of the matter. That's just where we are. Again, Amorim's hands are tied a little by just the squad that he has. So Lionheart says, there's a player in Spain who would be perfect for an Amorim system. He would give that bit of intensity that we need. Plays for Betis, maybe worth a scout report. Got to let me know the name. I didn't. I almost put. There were a couple players that I almost put in that video that they didn't quite make the cut necessarily, mostly just for time reasons. Like Mika Marmol, who plays at Las Palmas. There's a guy at Ipswich. I forgot his name now. It just escapes me off the top of my head. Players like that. There's a lot of options. Danny says, if you were supposed to take 2 touches, then Maguire takes 4 and 5 and kills the rhythm and passes it backwards. Yeah, it's just, if you're not comfortable on the ball, like Maguire, to his credit, has a good long-range pass, but because he's a defender, because he's not great on the ball, it is going to take him just another couple of touches just to get that ball where he needs to be. Maguire is not the type of player who, like, he doesn't have to look at the ball. He just, one touch, he knows where it is, and then he can just hoof it. And I'm not blaming him for that because you don't really see that a lot from defenders. But again, the system that we play needs very specific player profiles to work to a T. But that's why until you get that, there are little things we can do. Just pass the ball, move, get the ball wider, quicker. We hold on to it too long, and then by then we're getting pressed, and then we just pass it back to Onana, who just hoofs it in the first place when all he had to do was play that long ball in the initial phase on a counterattack or something. Like, it's just little things like that. Move the ball quicker, because more touches you take, whether it's Dallo, whether it's Maguire, whether it's our wingbacks playing too deep, it just allows the opposition to get into shape, and then you can't do what you want to do anyway. And then we don't win second ball, so there's no point in hoofing it. It's just, it all falls apart from the get-go. All right, moving on to the next one so far. And this is, I mean, we've been saying this for a couple weeks now, probably really a couple years, but we kind of say it a lot when these first-team players let us down, but it bears repeating again. Play the kids. It may sound cliche, but it bears repeating. Play the kids. If the first team can't show up on a consistent basis, whether it's mentality, whether it's quality, then the energy and the precociousness of youth, like we've seen sometimes from Garnacho especially, that could be the spark we need to push the senior players to really just to take a look in the mirror. You guys are split on the Amorim showing favoritism thing. I'm gonna end that poll. But we've seen what the precociousness of youth can do. When Garnacho first got introduced to the first team under Ten Hag, he had such a crazy impact off of the subs, off the bench in that first season. He was breaking records for the goals and the goal involvements coming off the bench. Like, that's what I like to see. Youth are hungry. They've got energy. They don't have any fear yet. So they're like an animal who's never like seen people. They don't know any better, right? So just let them off the leash a little bit. And I think that could be useful. The academy is the strongest that I've seen it in decades, really. And if you've been a part of the UVE community for a while, you know how excited I am about these youngsters. I've done videos on the academy. We've done watch-alongs for academy matches. We all regularly shout out key academy players that we think are ready for first team minutes. Guys like Biancheri, who is right around the corner from recovery. He had surgery on his hand. He's back in training. He's not that far off. Fletcher, Obi Martin, Ibrahimov, Morehouse, Harrison, Monroe, Fitzgerald, Thwaites, Comison, Monroe. They're all getting to that point where they're too good for the academy, and some are old enough to be getting first team minutes elsewhere. Now we've seen guys like Ennis and other guys go out on loan already because they're at that point. Ennis had his goal evolving. Dan Gore just went out on loan as well. A couple of players went to Tranmere Rovers on loan as well. So Amorim has been at academy matches alongside Darren Fletcher, alongside Jason Wilcox. He's given Kokonki, Fletcher, Harrison, and recently Grachick experience in and around the first team picture. He brought Collier. Now, Collier's not necessarily young, but he's given him more minutes. I mean, Collier's 21, so it is what it is. It's not lip service. It's not pandering to the fans to blood in a few youngsters. It's what this club is built on. It's what we regularly do. We've always got one or two youngsters coming through that look really good. Now, for every, menu, for every Garnacho, there are going to be players who aren't going to make it. It's just the way. Not everyone's going to come through, but we can move these players on as well, and that could also help us as well. I think a few of them are ready for cameos here and there. When Biancheri recovers from his hand surgery, I try him as one of the 10s. He's back training. Like I said, he does have more goals at the academy level than Obi Martin. The guy is and he's old enough. He's 18. I think he's ready. Fletcher could do a job in terms of just holding on to the ball in midfield and dictating play a little bit. Again, not to start a match, not to play 45 minutes, but to come on for a few minutes when we need to protect the lead and we need to hold on to the ball and take care of possession. That could be an option. I think he's a very good young ball player. Kokonki, Obi Martin again, Shea Lacey, who's back now from his injury layoff, Sekou Kone, etc., etc. Invite them to train with the first team. Put them in the match day squad and maybe give them minutes. Now, there's going to be some people out there who are worried with the youngsters, especially right now with the way things are going. There's always going to be people who are going to say, you're going to ruin their confidence. You're going to ruin their confidence. But really, when you think about how much pressure is really on them right now, given the circumstances, no one's looking to these youngsters to grab our season by the scruff of the neck and drag us over the line. No one's looking at these youngsters to score match winners. We're just trying to see who's ready, who can come in and help. And really, it's a kick up the ass for the first team, the senior players who are Champions League winners, full internationals, senior players who are in their late 20s, early 30s, who should be doing better. And also, even if there is pressure, even if the youngsters or even the first team for that matter is feeling pressure, and like you have people on staff who can talk to them about that kind of shit. I'm going to get caught up here. Let me see what everyone's saying. Jules, welcome. How are you, Jules? Good to see you again. How are you doing on a Sunday afternoon? Doesn't feel like Sunday. Teresa, do you see the footage of the full training session right after the game on Friday? Yeah, he was pissed off. Yeah, I did see that. I think it was Samuel Butthurst who put that up, a couple clips. Now, I don't think it was everybody who trained. I think it was some people. But, yeah, clearly he wasn't happy. I think we talked about that a little bit after the match. I can't remember exactly what drills they were going through, Jules, but they were doing a little bit of a training session at Old Trafford, which I thought was a no-no because that pitch is super, super expensive. You don't want to limit the wear and tear, but hey, it is what it is. I don't care about the price of the pitch. I don't care about the match day revenue and stuff right now. I care about putting a winning team on the pitch. I care about winning games. So it's not my job. It's not the player's job. It's not Amorim's job to look at the budget, right? INEOS' job to figure out how to make it work. Teresa says, right after the game, you send them back onto the pitch for full training session. Nice. Jules is good. Hope you're doing. I'm doing well. Just winding down the weekend a little bit. You guys know I'm stopping by just to get my thoughts on things, really to get your thoughts on things. So how's everybody feeling so far? Anything that's just kind of like, Sean, you're way out of line. You have no idea what you're talking about. Is there anything? And get your thoughts in too. If you have any suggestions for some tweaks, little things, some steps that changes we can make that you think could have a positive effect on the rest of the season. I'm not saying like what's going to win the league. It's just what's not going right and what can we do to maybe just improve it a little bit, just to maybe give us a better chance of results here and there, performances here and there, tactics, things like that. So that was 5. I have a bonus one though, because you guys know that maybe I just can't count, but I have another one. So let's talk about this one because this one's probably the biggest one personally. And Danny says, pack that midfield. Yeah, I have no problem. You guys know I put up those formations, the 3-5-2, the 3-4-1-2 with getting some more bodies in midfield. I think is going to be a big difference for sure. Here's my final one, and this one is sort of a bonus because it does kind of have more to do with the summer, but this has put pressure on INEOS. This is something that I'd like to see Amorim do. Not publicly. He doesn't have to go full Mourinho, full Antonio Conte, and just basically ask to get sacked by calling out the owners. But if he's not putting pressure on INEOS behind closed doors in these meetings, in these recruitment strategy sessions, then he's not doing himself any favors. I do things that, like a few things I've listed, they're going to save this season, but that's the current season. We can really put ourselves in a better position to compete going into next season if we start planning for that now. If Amorim is already really putting the bug in Ineos' ear, like, no, these players are not working. These are the profile of players I need. I don't care what you have to do. Go find this kind of profile. Here's some that I've looked at. Give me a list. We'll talk about it. But this is what I need because this shit is not working. INEOS gave Amorim an ultimatum with the United job. Basically, they went to him and said, join now or you don't join. We're moving on to someone else. You have to think that they made a few promises, gave a few assurances, I can say things, to entice him to make the move mid-season. Well, it's time to deliver. And it may be time for Amorim, like I said, to give INEOS an ultimatum of his own. Start working on priority targets, push current players' agents to find buyers for them, to find deals to get them out of the club, and start working on our summer business to get it done early because I need a preseason. We can't have any of this mid-August bullshit signings that I've got to then have a couple of weeks of training to work with because it's not work. Now, some of us might take that sentence that I just said and add an or else at the end of it, but we'll have that chat if and when it comes to that in terms of Amorim walking or not. Danny says, "Yeah, I want our transfer business done and finished by mid-July. We should. There's no reason and this isn't just an INEOS thing because we've seen this at United for years now. Again, under the old regime, I think this had a lot to do with saving money on wages. It's cheaper to wait a month to sign a player than to pay them a month of wages, but." 4 years, we have just taken way too long. We wait until the transfer window opens to start doing our business. And then it takes weeks and weeks. And more often than not, we don't get who we want. People are flying to Barcelona or Turin and they're coming back empty-handed. And we're settling for guys like Casemiro in mid-August. Or we wait too long to sign Antony and we pay $50 million more than the original price because we took 2 months to do our business. It's frustrating. I'm not trying to go in on any players. I'm just saying this is what we do at United. There's no reason for us to wait that long unless it's strictly financial. We are a big club. We should be acting like one. Teams like Dortmund get their summer business done sometimes in November. We've seen that they've literally announced summer signings before even the January transfer window. We've seen that in the last couple of years. There's no reason not to. It's just you have to put your manager in the best position. For now, like we've said many times, it's clear that Ruben Amorim needs players that suit his system. And if INEOS gave him this ultimatum, pushed him mid-season, paid the money to bring him and his coaches, sacked Ten Hag, they did all that to bring him in mid-season, they should know that he needs specific players. It's a completely different system, and they need to be prepared to back him. It's not just about wingbacks. It's not just about skill. It's about mentality as well. We need mentally strong players. We need leaders. We need hungry players who will fight for the badge and players who don't collapse when things aren't going well. We need resilience. I mean, Coventry came back from 3-0 down in the 76th, 75th minute to pull it level and force us to a shootout last season. That is mentality. That's resilience. That is a never say die attitude. We don't have too many players like that. When's the last time you saw anything like that from any of this squad ever? I've said it before. We've said it many times. The mentality, the resilience, the leadership, the footballing IQ, whatever you want to fill that blank with, is in the mud right now in this club because the players just aren't there. Let me see. Danny says 100% Danny, sooner the better since he's always saying there's no time for training. Yeah, he needs a preseason for sure. Jules says we should be working on transfers 1 to 2 years ahead. Instead, we've been reactive and therefore had a totally disjointed transfer vision. Yeah, and that's A lot of that is down to the previous regime, especially because they spent a decade just with no plan. They chop and change we had no strategy. It's get Moyes. Moyes didn't get any players aside Fellaini on deadline day, and then Juan Mata in January. Sacked him. We bought Jose Mourinho players. We sacked Jose, or we got Louis Van Gaal players. We sacked Louis Van Gaal. Jose didn't really like his players. We got Jose Mourinho players. Then we got Ollie players. And it was nothing but just buying for that manager, overpaying, paying too much in wages. And then when you do that, you can't sell. Again, we've spoken about this many times. It's academic. It could almost be its own textbook in a football finance course. It is what it is. This is why we're in the shit show that we are. But if INEOS want to put Amorim in the best position that they can to start next season strong, like you guys are saying, like I'm saying, we need to start early. We need to start identifying deadwood to clear it out. We need to put pressure on agents to find buyers for these clubs, or just basically tell these players, listen, if you want to play football, go find a new club because we're not in the plan. We need to sign our players quickly, get these deals done. And Amorim needs to stress the importance of this to him, because INEOS like to say they got best in class, but so far I'm not seeing anything that's shown me that they're anywhere as adequate as any other football club when it comes to recruitment and stuff. I'm just not seeing anything that tells me that. Amorim, again, he's not doing himself any favors if he's not stressing this point to them, because fans will start to turn on him if things don't turn around. Some of them already have. Bottom line is this. We can't afford to keep walking to the right decision when so many of our rival clubs are already stacked with talent. They're well into a rebuild, whether that's Arsenal or Liverpool or City or whatever, and they are still strengthening their squads. We're just continually being left behind. INEOS are fooling themselves with this supposed challenge of a title by 2028 or challenging by 2028 if they don't expedite this process a little bit. There's no point in prioritizing cost cuts or building a Wembley of the North if we're mid-table each season, because you're going to lose sponsors, you're going to lose Adidas money, you're going to lose players, you're going to lose the potential of quality players because no one wants to come play for a mid-table team. And like I said in my INEOS January recap live stream, figure it out, Sir Jim. This is your job. You can't just keep using PSR as an excuse. You can't just keep using the previous regime as an excuse. It's on you to find solutions to these problems. It's not on me. It's not on Amorim. It's not on the players. It's on you. You took charge of the club. This was your job. Figure it out. If you're complaining that there's debt, figure it out. Work with the Glazers. Find a solution and put it into practice. I get it's not as simple as just doing it overnight, but what are you doing proactively on your end to show me that you looked at these problems? Because you did due diligence too. You knew all this coming into it. I get that you didn't do any of it, but you knew it all, and you still signed the paper. You still shook the man's hand. You still did it. In the words of Roy Keane, that's your job. What are we saying here in the chat? Danny says 100 joules. The previous board didn't listen to Scott. You know what? Probably the most frustrating thing I've seen from the previous regime was sacking Ralph Rangnick, Danny. This was arguably one of the best minds in football when it comes to building, recruiting, talent identification. And he could, I'm going to go off on one. If you had kept Ralph Rangnick in his job, imagine, even if INEOS just want to look at it from a financial standpoint and not just a squad building standpoint, imagine the money he could have made us. He identified Caicedo, Julian Alvarez. If you could have bought those players at that time, you literally could have gotten like 3 players for like 15, 20 million who you could have literally turned around, sold for 80 to 100 million like Brighton did with Caicedo or like City did with Julian Alvarez. You could have been well out of this PSR situation. Now, that's not INEOS because they didn't make that decision, but Ralph Rangnick was not hired to be a manager. He took over as a manager. He was hired to be a director of football. And then when he didn't do a good job as a manager, again, a job he wasn't hired for, and then he called out how much work was needed in the squad, he got sacked for it. And we have suffered unnecessarily as a result. It's so frustrating. Danny says, if it didn't sell jerseys, the board wouldn't want them, Jules. Yeah, I think we're well past that. Jules says, agents will always want to instigate a move for their clients. Therefore, the fact we can't move players on must be the players not wanting to move. Well, no one's going to want to move when they're on a crazy ton of money. The only reason we were able to move out some players on loan is because clubs like Real Betis and Aston Villa and PSV, in the case of Anthony Rashford and Malacia, respectively, are willing to pay all their wages or the vast majority of their wages. The players want to get paid. It's not on the like. It just is what it is. The people who have been in charge of the most important decisions at this club for the better part of a decade, well over a decade now, are just totally inept and incompetent at their job. It's just because they're not football people. Then it says 100 that put us back half a decade. Yeah, it's fucking annoying. Lionheart says 100 UV. Yeah, I could. The whole Ralph Ragnick situation for me, like that to me, that was almost like heartbreaking the way that went down because I cannot explain to you how ecstatic I was when we appointed Ralph Ragnick as director of football. And then as high as I got, imagine the distance that I fell from that high when we sacked him and nothing has changed in terms of recruitment. Like it was like watching Looney Tunes when Coyote falls off and it's just a smoke. That's how I felt when that happened. I was just crushed by that. But if INEOS can't figure it out, like I can easily see, again, this is an if and when kind of chat, but I can easily see Amorim maybe even threatening to walk after another year if nothing changes, because he's not going to want to sit here and deal with this shit. I don't see him again. I don't see him as the type to go full Mourinho or Antonio Conte and publicly call out the owners, but the guy already looks miserable on the touchline, in pressers. Like he looks miserable. And I'm not really happy with his constant parroting of we want to avoid making the same transfer mistakes of the past line. It doesn't fill me with confidence. And again, that's not on him. He's being told this, but what else is he going to say? It is a rebuild and it will take time, but that doesn't mean there aren't things INEOS can do again to speed up the process, to put us in better positions, to try a little harder to find buyers for players, look a little more in the market, try to find these hidden gems. That's what you have scouts for. That's what you have guys like Vivell for. That's what Ralph Ragnick should have been here for, but we didn't care about that. So again, hopefully Amorim is pushing them behind the scenes and during these meetings and stuff and whatnot to try to impress upon them. Listen, what are we doing? Not even just literally asking them the questions, putting the onus on them to provide a response. What are we doing? Not like, oh, we're working, Ruben. No, what are you doing? Who are you looking at? Where are you looking? These are the positions I need. What are we doing? Who have you reached out to? Who are you speaking with? Where are the finances for this? What do we need to do? These are the players I don't want. Find them buyers. Like this is just start talking. Like this bullshit annoys me. Again, if he's not doing this, he's not advocating for himself. He's not backing himself. We'll have to wait and see. But until then, these are just a few simple changes and steps that I think Ruben Amorim can take between now and the end of the season. I'm not saying we're going to win the league. I'm not saying we're going to win. I just think they will bear fruit. I think they could have positive impacts, even if they're small. I think they could have positive impacts and potentially turn the fortunes around. You know, he does have a system, and while he may not have the players to execute it perfectly or even adequately right now, there are ways that he can get the most from what he has, and I do think some of these things could do it. There are messages that he can send to the senior players by promoting the kids. There's a time and a place for tinkering with team selection and positions on the pitch. Like most things in life, it's not about one big thing. It's a collection of small little things that make a difference. Even pebbles, when you throw them into the water, make big ripples. Just little things can have big impact. At this point, I think some of these things are worth a shot, whether that's two up top, whether that's playing the kids, whatever you want to call it. I think those things could really help. But that's just my opinion. I want to hear what your opinions are. You know, do you agree? Do you disagree? Am I completely just off my rocker? You know, if you have ideas of your own, let me know. Let me see where you guys are at in the chat. Lionheart says his football IQ is second to none. Yeah, on Ralph Ragnick, his talent identification, his ability to build a squad, even if you want to look at it financially, I think that INEOS are probably kicking themselves. I mean, we had Dan Ashworth. We still could have had Ralph Ragnick. Can you imagine Ralph Ragnick in this? Come on. Jewel says, we've hired two people for that position under two different owners, and both have been sacked immediately. Yeah. Again, we're not a well-run club. We're just not. It's just the plain and simple truth. We are not a well-run club. Danny says, sounds like narcissistic owners. And here's the thing. You see this at all levels, Jules. Even so you guys know that I was a board member for a semi-pro club here in Livonia, right? And I got to that position for just reaching out, talking, trying to learn more about starting a club at this level because it's simple to do, but we try to make it easily financiable here at this level. But I got to know this guy Luke, who's also heavily involved in other clubs. But you hear the same exact thing. The owners, even at this level, semi-pro level in Michigan, in like the Midwest Premier League or whatever, they want things their way, and they're not willing to listen. I experienced it. I was brought on as a board member, and I had ideas, I had suggestions. Like, I'm a business owner, I love football, like I'm good at sales. My job was sponsorships. I got a lot of money from sponsorship at this. I turned around the club's finances because of the sponsorship deals that I locked in. But they didn't want to hear that. They only wanted the money. They didn't want to hear suggestions on other things they needed to do. And I've seen that with other clubs, even at this level. And of course, you're going to see it at the Premier League level. These owners have a lot of money. I get it. But at the same time, you have to not force this echo chamber. You have to be open to feedback, to challenging. I mean, the Glazers basically made themselves a little bubble by appointing their friends, people they knew. They weren't willing to listen to outside opinion. Like you're saying, Jules, like opposing views come in and those people get sacked when they're not allowed to go. And even INEOS have done this. They did this with Ashworth, reportedly. Again, we don't know the 100% story. One day it'll all come out, but for now, that's what the line is. So, but yeah, Danny says it does sound a little bit like narcissism. I think it's less narcissism in terms of this elite self, like lofty self ideation. Like usually narcissism is like Ronaldo, narcissist, Jose Mourinho, narcissist. I think these owners just, they have their plan, they have their way they want to do things, and I don't think it's as much as like we just know best. It's just that this is what we want, and so this is like it's just a little, it's insecure, it's a little bit controlling, but it is annoying, and it does sound very similar. Composed View, welcome back. It says, I think Amorim is experimenting. I don't think he's actively trying to win some games. I think he's taken this season to feel and understand the team, fans, and league to a degree. I might be wrong. Well, I get that. I'm not saying that he can't. I'm just saying I'd like to see less experimentation, less chopping and changing, and more like, let's try to bang out a couple wins. Let's try to put together at least 2 wins on the bounce in the league at some point would be a great next stepping stone, because we haven't done that all season. Composed View says, I mean, he's not trying to lose intentionally. No one's saying that. But because I believe he's better tactically than he's letting on, some of the games are so simple to win, like Leicester. Yeah, and again, you guys let me know what kind of things. So, because we're about wrapped up here. I mean, there's not much going on as far as matches go. There were some FA Cup matches today. I know that Wolves beats Blackburn. Let me see who else is still playing. I want to see what this Liverpool scores. Liverpool are currently losing 1-0 to Plymouth, so that could be cool. Let me see what Liverpool are taking this seriously or not. Not super seriously. Now, Liverpool are fucking this off. They're trying to get Champions League. Liverpool went full Jurgen Klopp and just played the kids today. I will be watching that Aston Villa Tottenham game later because I'm interested to see if Rashford starts. Bando Mac, good to see you again. How are you? Robert Reed, welcome, my friend. How are you? 3 wins and a draw to safety. Yeah, I mean, there is that age-old adage, right, of how many points are needed. 40 points, I think, is usually the cutoff. I think somebody has thrown out that even like 35 could do safety. But again, we got, like, right now, my goal is very simple. Let's just win 2 in a row in the league. It's a big ask. We do have Spurs, but I will be watching the Spurs match later on today. I think it is Champions League this week, too, for the teams who didn't automatically qualify, City. So it could be interesting to see what happens this Champions League. We could see some heavy hitters completely miss out on Champions League altogether at an early stage. Some other big names in Champions League this round: PSG, Juventus, Real Madrid, Sporting, Dortmund, Bayern, AC Milan, Benfica, Atalanta. All these guys have not automatically qualified. And it is that same qualifying round right now for the Europa League this week. So we could get a pretty decent idea of who we have next based on what happens. So it could be FC Midtjylland, Sociedad, AZ Alkmaar, and Galatasaray could be our 4 opponents. Who do you guys want? Because I don't want to see any more Galatasaray. I still have trauma. I'm tired of Spanish opposition because we always seem to struggle against Spanish opposition, and we have struggled against Sociedad. Again, I'm not one of these people who was like in the cups, give me the best. I want to beat the best. No, give me the shit. No offense. I'm not trying to say anyone should, but give me the worst possible opponent, the easiest, because I want to advance. So give me Midtjylland. We'll do that. For anyone else besides me who's on Hayden Hackney watch, because you guys know how much I love Hayden Hackney, Middlesbrough play on Wednesday as well. So I'm not going to stop singing his praises. I think he's exactly what we need in midfield. So go watch him. And then we have the rescheduled Merseyside derby this week, so that could be interesting as well. Slash says Liverpool losing is always nice. It is always nice. So Arsenal already out of it as well. Obviously, they went out the other day to Newcastle, so that's always watching. Jewel says 16 watching, 11 likes. Remember to tap that like. Yes, please do tap the like button. Please do subscribe to the channel if you'd like. Check out the membership perk too. Like I said, there are a few options in there that do literally let you tell me what you'd like to talk about on the channel, what kind of players you'd like me to scout and stuff. So go check those out. I have no problem with that, but because it does take up a bit of time, it is part of the membership perks, but I would love to hear your suggestions, because you literally could decide what we talk about on the channel with that as well. Robert Reed says 4 of our next 5 are winnable in the league. Yeah, the Spurs match is going to be tough personally. And obviously we'll do a preview later on this week of that match as well. And then we'll take a look at some of the Champions League. Like I said, we'll probably do some more streams throughout this week because we're not playing until the weekend. Probably talk a little bit about some news. News has gone quiet, obviously, with January transfer window being closed, but you never know. Banomac, yes, get the worst and maybe bigger teams get knocked out. Yeah, although we do tend to struggle against these lower sides who, again, just they show up and they're physical and they try and they just fight and fight and fight. We always struggle against those sides, no matter who it is. We saw it against Leicester as well. Southampton literally beat us around the park for 80 some odd minutes, and we managed to scrape something with an Ahmad hat trick. I was at that match. It was not pretty. Jewel says Midtjylland would be brilliant if Cheeto could be dropped in and score a brace in his debut. Yeah, that was one of my options today too. You guys play the kids. I listed a ton. Biancheri, Cheeto. These guys really could be due for minutes. Teresa says if those exceptional players had scored with all those missed goals on target, we would be closer to the top 4 than the bottom 4. Yeah, it's always, ifs, ands, and buts and things like that. If you wish you can go back and change things, it's just we are where we are. We have to keep moving forward. We can look at what went wrong, what went well, and try to make some tweaks and then move forward and see what happens. But the players have a lot to own up to. I think Amorim has some things that he can do as well to make a couple changes. Again, not asking them to completely change anything, just make little things. And then INEOS have a role to play in this as well in terms of just setting us up for the summer business early and putting Amorim in a better position to really back him because they gave him an ultimatum. They paid a lot of money, and all that money hurt us PSR-wise. They have to show that they're ready to take on that challenge as well. So Banomac just noticed the Newton Heath color shirt. Yeah, this is the one. So usually I'll save this shirt for like the last match of the season. I usually always wear this on the last match of the league season. Just I don't know. It's like a tradition. I don't know why. I just do. But it is an old one. It is. There's nothing on the back. I don't get the only jerseys I have that have names on them are in frames. Mostly just because I worry. Like the more I wear them, the more I wash them. It's just one more part of the jersey that I worry about maybe getting damaged a little bit in the wash. So it is what it is. Jewel says the green and gold kit is amazing. This is, I think this is what, 93, 94, 92, 93, somewhere in the earlier 90s kind of time. I'm old, so some of those years kind of blur together. But yeah, this is very, very old. The old Sharp logo. If you guys can't see, it is a fun jersey where I just felt like throwing it on today. Why not? So anyway, that is going to be it for me. If you weren't able to catch the live, or even if you're on the live and you think about some stuff and you want to throw it in the comments later. Let me know what kind of changes, what little things you would do that you think could make a difference between now and the end of the season. I want to know your opinions. I'm really, really happy for all the feedback today. Is a really good conversation. I'm going to let you guys go enjoy the rest of your Sunday. If you guys are going to watch Villa Spurs, that could be an interesting one. Let me check the Liverpool score real quick again before I take off because it might be worth laughing. Yeah, they're still down. So could be interesting. Until then, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, everyone, for stopping by. You guys know I love to see you guys stop by. Please like the video. Please subscribe if you're new. Check out the memberships if you guys want to try to get a little bit more involved as well. Until then, I will see you guys later on in the week, maybe with some new shows, maybe with another show like this. Until then, I'll take it easy, guys. Talk to you later. Bye.